Hey guys, welcome back to the 429 podcast. I'm 9,
I'm 4.
Two.
and today we have a very special topic in mind for you guys. Today we'll be talking about something that's actually been going on news technically a lot recently with Oculus and Facebook, but we're going to go a little bit more broad today and talk about VR in general, and it's essentially the future of VR can have on us and our society as a whole.
Damn.
Right?
Nice.
So before we, dive right into our headlong intense conversation of what VR can impact our society, we should probably talk to people. What is VR? What is the VR?
VR.
So, if guys don't know, VR stands for virtual reality, right?
I thought it was going to be Vermin Riller.
Vermin Riller is another common mistake that a lot of VR enthusiasts make, but no, it stands for virtual reality, and essentially, it puts you in a different world. That I don't know if you guys seen VR tropes. They're in movies, they're in video games, they're done all over the time. Usually it's
VR tropes? What the hell's a trope?
So, you don't know what a trope is? It's like,
No, I don't know what a trope is.
On it or something. It's just like a tangent, I guess.
A tangent. It's like a common repetitive thing that happens all the time, right? So, of course, like for VR, a big one is that, it places you in a new world. Especially in like entertainment or movies, VR can teleport you to like a world that doesn't exist in reality, like a fantasy world, a medieval world, right? And a lot of people attend to gaming, right? Like you can, become a soldier in the VR world, or live out a lifestyle that you wouldn't have in normal life.
Fight Darth Vader.
Like Darth Vader, like that. Darth Vader is a great example, actually. And so, like VR has always been kind of a promise or an avenue to like give you sort of like an escape, right? That's always been kind of the VR experience, kind of give you an escape across or outside your normal world. So what do you guys think of VR? Like, you guys have any experience with VR?
I love VR, man. So my first experience with VR was actually probably 9. I think it was your Oculus like years ago, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah. The wired Rift.
The wired one, exactly. In your basement. I remember playing on that one. What were we playing? It was that robot game. Like
Robo Recall.
Recall. Yeah, that was the one.
That was a great game.
It was a lot of fun. That was, I think, actually the first time I've ever been in virtual reality before, and I kind of always wanted to like have my own VR headset after I played in that, and then luckily, I managed to get my hands on an Oculus Go, which was cool, but it wasn't really full VR headset. Then eventually I ended up with an Oculus Rift, and I mean, they're really cool. They're very dope. I gotta tell you, like, first off, the technology has come a really far way in, the span of only a couple of years, probably like, 4 or 5 years, in terms of like the sensing and the sensors, and like, there's even some like cool beta features and stuff now where you can use your hands instead of having to use controllers. They do hand tracking. It's high resolution cameras to like actually determine where you are in your room. You can see if you're going to hit stuff. So like VR has come a really, really long way, really quick. And I mean, I think it's dope, right? So I like to play a lot of Beat Saber. That's probably my favorite game on VR currently.
It's a great game.
It is a lot of fun. So I mean, I know, especially like during quarantine and stuff, when you're not outside, don't want to go do stuff. I found myself playing a lot of Beat Saber because like I wanted to get up, I needed to like move a little bit, and don't really want to go out too much, especially at the beginning of this whole thing. So I found myself trying to escape, just like you said, in VR, and like that was how I was getting up and kind of trying to stay active during the beginning of the quarantine. I mean, now I'm just lazy again, but at the beginning of the quarantine, I was trying to stay active. But I mean, they're really cool, and I'm pretty excited for where they're going, where they're coming. What do you think, too? What are your experiences?
Yeah, so just like both of you, so we were fortunate enough to get a couple opportunities to win some of these Oculus headsets and everything, right? And so we played around with it, and I've had, same as 4 and 9, the Go and the Rift. And I had to say the Go was, I'm sorry?
The Quest.
The Quest, sorry, not the Rift. The Go and the Quest. And I have to say, for the Go, I'll speak on the Go briefly, right? I only used that like once, maybe twice, right? Because they had some nice like mapping features and like seeing like you were underwater or like on a roller coaster and stuff like that. So that was really cool, right? But it was more of a like
novelty.
trying to watch like Netflix with it or stuff like that. It wasn't really just a gaming type of thing, right? It was supposed to be like for like the consumer market.
Oh, you're
So it
talking
didn't
about
really,
the Go.
yeah, the Go. So it didn't really stick, too well with me, right? And then the Quest, on the other hand, right, which is basically a wireless Rift, is the way I see it, right? Was really cool, right? I like the environment of it. I like how like you could play around with it. Just like 4 and 9, I played my ton of Beat Saber, but let me tell you, Robo Recall, I dominated in that game. That was like my Call of Duty for the Rift, for the Oculus, right? So it was like that was really nice and all, but I say all of this with a caveat, right? So for those of you, obviously you guys don't see us face to face, but I wear glasses, right? And so one of the biggest things in the whole virtual reality sort of realm is like, how do you really work with people who wear glasses and don't wear glasses, right? And me personally, after like maybe 30 minutes or an hour in the VR world, like it really irritates like the hell out of my eyes, right? And so Nine knows this a lot because I always go to him and complain after I'm done playing VR, and
Constantly complaining.
but it's like I'm not that big of a fan of actually gaming on a VR headset. I think maybe once in a blue moon, like maybe I'll pop out my Quest and play it. But in reality, it's like it's not really for me personally. I would much rather prefer playing like on a console or on a PC playing video games, or even just doing everything else in the real world and not the virtual world. But that's just me personally. I know we have friends who, once quarantine started, one actually lived in VR, and like, I mean, he woke up, put the VR headset on, did his whole life in the VR headset, and then went back to sleep, and all he did was just take off the VR headset.
Yeah, that's nuts,
right?
man.
So like, we've had friends who did that, and we're all just mind blown by that. It's like, personally, I like the real world, but that's just me.
Yeah, so that's a really good. I see from you guys' experiences that like VR has pretty much been a tribute to pretty much gaming, to one-on-one, right? So that's been pretty much, and let's keep it in that scope for now, like because that's pretty much the primary avenue that VR has started with, or I should say, mainstream VR has started with lately and gone with, like the potential and the experience of VR gaming, right? You have companies like Oculus and companies like Valve, big front runners on the VR gaming headset with their products such as, like we mentioned, Oculus Quest, Oculus Rift, and of course you have Valve's Index headset. These are pretty much forerunners in the VR technology right now, and they're constantly trying to innovate and outperform the other person. With Index's unique, vast of features that basically zero wireless, individual finger detection technology, insane stuff, but it costs thousands of dollars. And you have Quest, who's going like kind of the low end, middle end of a consumer range, still offer good features, but like give it at a more affordable cost, right? And it makes sense in the gaming world to offer VR. It's just another way to play your video games. I mean, gaming itself has always been trying to find new avenues to enhance the experience
and escape,
right?
On top of that, right?
Yeah,
but like on top of that, besides gaming, right? So I don't want to just stick straight to gaming. There's been so many other use cases of VR, some nice, some not so nice, right? I won't go into mentioning the not so nice, but if you guys have access to a computer, you guys can pretty much Google what VR was originally intended for. But some of the nice benefits have come, from, I would say Google was probably the pioneer of this one with the Google Box, right? Where they really started teaching through virtual reality. So they actually now Google Box is actually a very cheap, I would say, way of getting virtual reality. It's really just attaching a phone to like a cardboard box kind of headset, and you put it on, and you're now in this like virtual reality world. And most of the Google Box users were using it for teaching purposes. So you had like teachers actually teach through virtual reality, like
100%.
math, English, and other concepts. And this was really put in places around the world where access to a classroom or access to school subjects was not really, accessible at that point in time. So you're thinking of like villages in, India and Africa, right, where it wasn't as accessible. but it's really made a difference in those kids' lives because they actually got to see, you know, what a classroom is like and how they actually get to learn and immerse themselves in a teaching experience rather than in a just plain experience, right?
100%. I think that's important to distinguish that like a lot of people contribute VR to gaming, but like VR has a lot of potential and benefits outside of gaming itself. Like education, I think, is like a big one.
Education is a really big one. And, you know, I think another really big area, too, is possibly in the medical industry. So, for example, you know, think about doctors being able to go in virtual reality to train and learn how to perform surgeries on, you know, virtual patients inside of, like, you know, almost like a game simulator, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Something like Surgeon Simulator, except, like, actually realistic, right? I mean, this would really help young doctors learn how to perform surgeries well without having to ever put real humans at risk, right? So, I mean, that's another really cool area of it. And I like that you bring up virtual reality when it comes to education also because, I mean, especially now, once again, during this pandemic, I know we bring that up every episode, but, like, that's been our life for the past 4 or 5 months. So, I mean, I guess it's always going to get brought up. Wow, it's been
5 months? Damn.
So, but
it's probably not 5 more months.
You know, think about how easy the transition back to school could have been if, like, every student had their own VR headset and 360-degree cameras were set up in classrooms, right? Like,
to be insane. Like, it wouldn't be like you're even like left school. I mean, like, of course, there'd be some caveats, changes, right? You're not going to be the same experience, right? You can't just like annoy your friend across the room next to be like, hey, what you get for a B?
Honestly, I would prefer that if they like when schools did reopen, right, that they all just did like if they could have remote learning like from home because let's be real, like it's gonna be really awkward when you got to go to the bathroom or something with your virtual reality headset because it's like, all right, so you take it off, great, now the teacher knows you're not paying attention because
hey, I mean, like,
off.
I mean, think about it this way. I mean, you can't just go to the bathroom willy-nilly if you're in the classroom physically, right? You gotta ask, right? So I guess that teachers would like that. You know, it actually atones that like students are paying attention on just, you know, going to Zoom
on the teacher's perspective, I think it's gonna be great. On the student's perspective, I think they would hate it.
Well, okay, well, put it this way, like, you know, let's say that I have a little Post-it note to cover up the sensor to note if I'm actually wearing my VR headset or not before it auto shuts off.
Let's be real, you out of all people would skip class and then on your VR headset just go play Beat Saber.
Dude, that's actually so true.
I wouldn't do that. I would program Beat Saber into that application for the school so I could play within the school. That's what I would do. But there's a lot of like you know, huge benefits to education. I mean, like even just outside of classrooms, like just once again with the training benefit, right? Think about how many training possibilities you can have with VR outside of even medical or education, military training, or even like what's it called? Like dangerous circumstances where you have to like train for specific jobs. That it's easier to train in VR than it would be in the field.
Yep.
Oh yeah, like there's examples all over the place. So NASA uses VR for their astronauts to
100%.
Let them scope it out their environments and everything. You know, Ford already brought up the medical industry, but as he was talking about the medical industry, another industry that hit me was the aeronautics industry, right? So flight simulators and everything. Flight simulators, for those of you who don't know, are super expensive. Just getting like a whole flight simulator set up, like even in your own personal home or whatever, could be anywhere between like $3,000 to maybe $10,000, right? Depending on how crazy you want to go with your flight simulator, right? And even those flight simulators are targeted to like specific types of planes. Whereas like in virtual reality, you can go get an Oculus Quest for like maybe $200 or $300 it retails for, right? And like pop on that headset and get the basics of flight simulation down pat before you move on to those more complex systems, right? Because like we said, those systems are expensive. So if you go break one of those systems, that air training company, whether you're working with any of the major airlines, is out a chunk of change. Whereas with an Oculus Quest, they could just easily replace one of those and keep going. But I like the point you brought up about education, right? Because, you know, I think we're seeing more widespread adoption of this. So I can give you a perfectly actually like close to home example. So I work with a nonprofit, right? For privacy purposes, I won't state the nonprofit or anything along those lines. But we recently had a meeting, and in the meeting, the senior, I guess you could say like chairman of the nonprofit, right, brought up a very interesting point, right? he brought up the point that we're heading towards, based off how this whole pandemic is, he kept referencing the movie Ready Player One, which, if you guys haven't seen it, it's a whole virtual reality type of
I'll have
movie,
a great story about that.
Right? But the point he brought up is that, with the teaching that this nonprofit did remotely this past summer, they can easily escalate it and elevate it to a level with virtual reality. So it's like, unfortunately, this nonprofit that I work with couldn't hold their camps in person this year, like many other summer camps, right? But what they did was they transitioned online. But they transitioned online. But again, you still face the same problems the school system faces, right?
Mm-hmm.
People not paying attention, and then they didn't get as high of a sign-up rate also, just because like people had a bad feeling. It's like, oh, I just spent 6 months at home on a Zoom video call. Do I really want to spend another month on a Zoom video call for this nonprofit, right?
Yeah.
But when you bring in the element of virtual reality, right? He brought up a very good point, and that's something that never even hit me. Was like, you can really elevate teaching mechanisms with this nonprofit to a whole other level. You could really have all these students back in a lecture hall at, this university and just go, whoa, like we see everyone in reality. You could see, like, you'd be able to see, like, I'm really into holograms. I don't know about you guys, but I'm really into like holograms and stuff. So seeing like a hologram of like your teacher or professor or whatever walking across the stage in your virtual reality realm and seeing all that occur would be just really cool, because it really immerses you in that experience.
Yeah.
Right? And it gives you that experience from the comfort of your home, right? But at the same time, you're getting it's a virtual reality experience, right?
Yeah.
100%. And I'm glad also you brought up NASA earlier, because NASA was actually one of the few early people to actually basically pioneer the VR technologies we know today. Like not even kidding. Like I don't think you ever heard of their View system, which stands for Virtual Interface. What's it called? Environmental Workstation, right?
Mm-hmm.
That whole system they invented back in the 1980s is basically our modern VR headsets today. It was basically a head-mounted device with gloves that enabled haptic interaction with digital elements. That's pretty much like word to word what a VR headset is today.
So what you're saying is we haven't made any progress since 1980. Okay, got it.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but that was a chunky boy. They basically like slapped on a TV to that guy's ears, put on some digital gloves, and then the guy touched shapes. He's
probably like 144p. Oh,
144p. You're talking about maybe, if he's lucky, 5 frames per second. We have definitely improved. But
what did you guys think the first laptop was? The first laptop was literally a computer tower strapped to your back with a monitor in front of you and a keyboard attached to your stomach.
Don't forget about the car battery.
But 100%, these technologies go way back. Like VR, a lot of people atone VR is like something kind of like relatively new. Well, in some aspects, the modern VR it is, but the technology and the just even the aspect of VR has been back since, you can even say, by the 1930s, where they had the old stereoscopes, where they used mirrors to basically project one image to like fool you into it being right in front of you and stuff like that. Or the Viewmaster, which was like the whole like wheel thing you click and you view. Like, oh, I'm in Africa. Oh, I'm in the safari.
That was the first thing I did with the Go. Let me tell you.
Yeah, those are the same basically principles, just upscaled with the latest technology and haptic feedback and what's it called, VR controllers. We're talking about the same thing. So the principles of VR has gone way back, but we're now getting to the point where, one, it's basically like truly digital, and two, it's getting to the mainstream audience. Like VR isn't just like a niche thing that pop, like, for only a few basically enthusiasts can afford. Now you're getting like basically you can get headsets for like $100-$200 easily. If
you go with like the Google Box starts at $35.
Well, just cardboard, man. I just go outside, get an Amazon package, cut it up into a certain shape, and boom, that's it. That's my Google Cardboard right there. And I mean, like, and the fact that you can you basically own a device already in your pocket that can basically attribute to some VR experience right away at the moment. Most people already have these smartphones that can basically emit VR experiences already.
Abilities,
Yeah, like we're basically getting to the point where VR is going to basically become a mainstay in your household appliance. It's going to be like the same thing as a smartphone is to everyone to a TV. It's going to be something that's just in everyone's household, and no one's going to even bat 2 eyes about it.
Well, it's not going to be in my household, I'll tell you that much.
We'll see.
Maybe it's just me, but I feel like a lot of people I know already have VR headsets everywhere. So.
Oh, 100%. Well, yeah, remember we're a little like biased.
We're in the nerd community.
Yeah, we're a little biased in that area where we have like a lot of what I call like technology prone friends. People who are getting the most immersion technologies, the most.
We use it for and
we lie to ourselves that it's for work or some other.
I mean, to be honest, we did use it for R&D purposes. So I'll give you an example. I don't know if you guys remember when we did a couple of these, right? Back when we took software development together, right? Mm-hmm. We built that program for virtual reality, right?
Yeah.
And that's when I think we all learned right then and there, like, how difficult it is to actually build great, compelling apps for these systems, because you're no longer on a flat surface, right? Flat surface programming is a lot easier than
the two axis. Right, the whole new axis.
Than this three-dimensional programming, because the problem here is, and we all went to a talk to discuss this and actually get, advice from experts who work at Oculus, which is owned by Facebook, and it's currently, I would say, the leader in virtual reality development, right? Mm-hmm. Getting quality photos and getting the right angles and getting 360 panoramic views of each of the rooms is so difficult. Like, I remember, I think it was one of the Oculus chief developers saying that, hey, like, it takes us like a solid hour just to get the photo, right? Because you have to remember, like, if you saw their camera, oh God, man, like, just setting up that thing looks like it took 45 minutes. Then they're going all the way around to take the photo. And even if you have the lighting off in even one small corner of that photo, they gotta start the whole process again, right?
Just truck it.
Just because you can't stitch those photos together. And that's the most difficult, crucial element here, is that it's so hard to stitch together good quality photos of all the things. And to make matters worse, when you talk about things like maps or traffic or just, how we discuss, like, oh, I want to be in the sub-Saharan Africa or whatever, right?
Yeah.
All of those photos need to be retaken again and again and again, because you have to remember, these things are changing, right? That's why you guys still see the Google Maps cars still go around everywhere, right? They just keep changing, they keep evolving, and it's so hard to keep up with the development of these life cycles, right?
100%.
And that's why, personally, virtual reality, it's going to be tough for me to go back to those things again. Let me tell you, it's so hard to develop. And don't get me wrong, I love a challenge, but at the end of the day, I never saw the key benefit for that VR experience. I don't know, maybe you guys can chime in, like, when you guys were developing those virtual reality apps, with me. What did you guys feel was your net benefit besides the actual learning experience for these apps?
Well, I can say from a UI and like UX kind of like engineer, right? The one huge benefit right away I could think of is just it's a whole new way to immerse your users instantly. Like, you're talking about a whole new avenue to immerse clients and users in an insane way in any field, right? Entertainment, education, gaming, medical. You're talking about a whole potential way to really bring your clients into a whole new experience that they wouldn't be able to get in another format, right? And that's pretty much just the biggest benefit right away with VR in general. You can essentially have, like, for example, what's it called, for like traveling? Like, you can set up traveling locations previews for your clients and have them check it out, go through these landmarks and see how they like it, or what kind of like culture they will have, or even stuff like what's it called, house marketing or real estate, right? You can check out houses easily.
Like, that's what I was building.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is, I think, one of the greatest benefits when thinking about this, developing any VR application, right? It's just a huge, insane, immersive way to basically bring to your clients, right? Like, it wouldn't be the same if I was like, again, with the real estate example, if I gave you a bunch of pictures, right? That's fine. You'll get the same gist, but it wouldn't feel the same impact as I were to, like, hey, here's a VR tour of the house. You can really get to the nitty-gritty of the details of what these rooms are, what their scales are.
I'll tell you the biggest challenge when I was developing that application, right?
Yeah.
It goes back to those 360-degree photos. You can't get good quality 360-degree photos with your cell phone.
No.
No
Well,
matter
that's the
how
thing.
far.
That's why there's special cameras for this.
And that's
But
why they're
even
hundreds of dollars.
Yeah,
exactly.
well,
So
that's the thing. There's still a cost to all this. It's not as mainstream as it should be right now. But that thing can change easily over time.
Yeah.
Right. But I think what we've noticed from the VR experience, right, has been the integration of these on the flat surfaces. So, for example, right, our cell phones or our computers, right, you go into Maps, whether it's Apple or Google Maps, whatever maps you go into, right,
Yeah.
they have the look around feature where
Yeah.
you can actually look around in 360 panoramic views of the neighborhood or anything around you. And even if you go to websites like how we just mentioned real estate, right?
Yeah.
Like if you go to places like Zillow has some 360-degree views that you can see, right? Yes, they may not be onboarded onto a virtual reality headset. The question's debatable. What did they not do it because of they didn't see a benefit to it, or did they not do it because the majority of the consumer base doesn't own one, right? So we don't know the answer to that one right now. But what we've seen is the elements of virtual reality actually come online, right? And that's what I think has been the most interesting change over the last, I would say, 5 years, is that more and more products and more services are adapting the virtual reality protocol of showing, 360 panoramic views of things, rather than just the usual old flat surface pictures we've seen. I don't know. Ford, what are your thoughts?
I can definitely see what you're saying, where a lot of companies are now offering that kind of like on a 2D screen, but kind of VR-like experience. And I mean, I think this just goes into a lot of what Nine was saying, where it's another way for companies and developers to kind of give their clients a new experience, right? Like for a long time on the internet and in magazines and newspapers, even before the internet, everything was purely 2D, right? And it's really only recently, within like the last 5 to 10 years, that we're starting to see like 3D capabilities, right? Like for example, you've got, even on your phone, you go to YouTube, sometimes you have 360 videos, without a VR headset, you can still swipe around, turn around, look, right? And I think this brings us into another really cool topic of, augmented reality, right? Where now you're not talking about fully virtual, but you're talking about using the existing world around you and kind of adding to it, making it better, or adding features to real life, right? And we have a couple examples of that. To be honest, I don't think it's been growing as fast as VR has, virtual reality. I think VR is definitely easier, maybe I would say. I don't know if easier is the right thing to say, but it's definitely been growing faster. But you've got things like the Microsoft HoloLens, which, once again, comes at a hefty price point and is still pretty clunky for an augmented reality headset. And then, for a long time, you had the promised Google Glass, which never actually happened. But, I mean, if they would have pursued that, or if they ever decide to pick it back up, I mean, that could be really cool, because that would have been a really big piece of augmented reality meant to be used in everyday life. So, I mean, personally...
Side note, I still believe the Glass was just not brought in the right timing. Like, I think if you were to release something like the Google Glass now...
Yep.
Oh, dude, it would take off, no problem.
Yeah.
Well, there's rumors that Apple's the one going to do it.
They could.
All right, so they could. Let's get into it. Let's actually talk about some of these rumors. Nine, why don't you take the lead on that?
Well, I see. To pour fire on their fame, this is literally just today, but Apple literally just bought a VR startup.
Today?
Yeah, this is like today or yesterday. They literally bought a VR startup.
Interesting.
So it's literally the article headlines like, is it going to finally turn VR from geek to clique? So like kind of mainstream.
You mean
cheek, whatever. But like that's like you said, like I really think Google Glasses was a really good idea, just in a really bad time.
It was about
right?
5 years too early, I think. 5 years
I
later.
agree.
When did it come out? 2010, right? I think that's when it started basically coming out. They're talking about like almost basically 10 years ago. Like that's insane. No one even thought about VR AR at that time. No. And Google's coming out being like, you know what? We're giving it out. We're gonna prototype test it, and we're gonna launch as a full product. Oops, that's a lot of work. We didn't realize how much it is. Right? But now you're talking about companies that didn't even think about VR, dabbling their teeth in VR. Like real estate is a really good example we keep bringing back, but like no one has thought like 5 years ago, hey, let's start giving house tours in VR. What's it called? Travel agencies. What's it called? Even movies are even thinking about doing like VR movie theater showings and stuff like that. You're talking about companies that didn't even want to even touch the VR environment are now considering even dabbling or putting even part of their company experience.
And there's also one extra piece I forgot to mention before when I was going over the medical usage for VR. Think about people who are paralyzed, terminally ill, can't go out, can't do things, right? Need an escape. VR is perfect for those types of people, right?
100%.
It gives them the opportunity to escape that kind of like bleak life that they're living if they're really stuck like that, right?
And we're all living very bleak lives right now.
So, I mean, it gives a really cool opportunity for people who otherwise would never be able to have those opportunities, right? You know, picture even if you're older and you're too weak to get up, you can't walk, you can't do things, right? Well, guess what? Go into VR, you can do whatever you want to do. So, I mean, it's got some other health implications for people who otherwise would kind of be very, I would say, maybe depressed or unhappy, not being able to do anything.
So from a mental, you're taking the angle from like a mental health perspective, which is super crucial because like, you know, as people get older, as people get more frail, you know, it's hard for them to go and see their families who may live overseas, right?
100%.
So bringing virtual reality to those, you know, old people so that they could see their sons, nephews, granddaughters, nieces, nephews, whatever, right, that live overseas and bring them, I guess, in the room with them, right? It's different when you see them over a video chat call, right, than when you see them, like, literally in the room with you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
right?
for sure.
That's really interesting.
I don't know if you guys remember this, but Facebook dabbled and even introduced the idea of like VR memories, right? It basically take some of your photos, stitch them up into like a VR hub world, right? And you can basically relive a lot of your memories in like VR experience. Like talk about living some of your best memories through photos and videos that you collected over the years in a whole new immersive way, like seeing like basically like your 18th birthday again, or basically your graduation all over again, and just seeing it with your own eyes in a huge immersive way.
Being
like
in
the
same room as a loved one who might have passed on, right? Like that's another really big one.
Like VR can offer a lot of potential avenues outside of just gaming. Like the benefits are extremely insane once you start applying it to different fields, or even applying it to mental health in general. Like it can really help a lot or change a lot of people's lives in general. You know.
I know.
But
I know we briefly touched on this, right? When on 9 or 2 rather talked about Ready Player One. But how far away do you guys think we are from full dive virtual reality? I'm talking like Ready Player One. You know, I'm talking like Sword Art Online. Like, you know, you put on a headset and you are completely virtualized. You can see, taste, touch, smell, bam, everything.
Slap, punch, die.
Okay. When you start bringing in the senses, you know, that's when my answer actually just completely changed when you started saying the 5 senses, right? Because I think at the first sense that they focused on sight, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think the sight aspect
we got the sight
they focused on.
We got sight pretty good.
They've nailed it.
Yeah.
I think Oculus. I think, you know,
well,
I'm only familiar with Oculus.
See, I'm not talking about putting a screen in front of your face. I'm talking about something more along the lines of like visual prosthesis.
I would say Oculus is still far more advanced than we think, right? And I think the only limitation Oculus has right now is that we know that the human eye can see in so many different colors. You know, Apple, I think, is the best company on this because Apple studies a lot of this, and that's how they incorporate it into their really high-end computer screens and their Retina displays, right? So I think Oculus is getting there, but I think Apple definitely has a ledge on, you know, merging reality and virtual, right, based off the screen designations. Audio, I think audio has always been fine. I think audio, arguably, was the easiest because you see some really nice speakers coming out from the side of the headset, and it's pretty good, right? Now you get into the more interesting ones. Smell and taste, right? And now feel. How can you really adjust that? Now, you brought up the point with, you know, you could get rid of the controllers, but really that's all you really have, right, in virtual reality is those weird circular controllers that
Well,
Oculus
actually,
has,
I
right?
don't know if you guys ever seen these like full on like VR like mounts. Like there's these
Mhm.
VR essentially like it's like a VR treadmill. Like it's like
Yep.
a hexagonal treadmill, right? And it straps you on right from an overhead anchor, right? And as you run with your feet, the platform moves in the direction of your feet.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Right.
think this was more to the point of like for saying this like in your home, right? How can you have it
Well,
like
I mean, like
Well-
it just it's not that big of a like hexagon. Like you
Let
can
me
find, it's like,
let me give you guys a brief description of how it would probably have to work, right? So I know you're saying that like, oh, audio is good enough, visual is good enough, right?
but sight, but like the
so-
point you brought up, taste, smell, and feel, we're still a very, very long way of getting there.
here's where I think
it's
this
not
would have to go,
psychological.
right? So you would have to tap into the human nervous system to do this stuff properly, right? Because at the end of the day, what are like your senses, right? They're just impulses from your nervous system sending data in the form of an electrical signal through your freaking neurons, and then eventually I guess they're converted back and forth between the synapses to chemical signals, but eventually they're getting back to your brain, at which point your brain makes you feel those things or makes you like have those senses and those experiences. So, and believe it or not, I personally think that the harder part, right, even harder than, being able to kind of tap into the human nervous system and kind of like artificially create senses and artificially create experiences, the harder part, and a lot of people don't think about this, is the technological limitations of modern computers, right? So think about this. Currently, video games have a hard time and require a very expensive graphics cards, processors, and just computing equipment to play games at 4K, right? But
Yeah.
think about what the human eye sees at right now. You're talking about way higher than 4K. You're talking about probably at least 120 FPS, I would assume, maybe higher, maybe closer to 240, right? Maybe even higher than that. So, I mean, you're talking about you need extremely high refresh rate on that computer to be able to feed that into the human body, right? Even if, let's say you've perfected the biometric, the bioengineering part of it, right? You need insane computing equipment to even think about feeding, real 360 degree, 16K, 300 FPS visuals back into the human body before you even considered smell, taste, touch, sense, audio, right? Like sound. Now you've got to take into account every one of those senses and the raw amount of data that needs to be transmitted and downloaded and processed and sent back up, plus the latency problems if you're at an online game, right? Think about all of these compute problems outside of your biomedical engineering applications that you'd have to have. So even if right now, today, we had perfected the method of interacting with the human nervous system artificially, even if we perfected that right now in 2020, we still wouldn't be able to have full dive virtual reality like I'm talking about in terms of purely prosthesis and like artificially creating those senses, simply because we don't have the compute power, at least not available in the consumer realm for sure, without having some type of $100 million supercomputer to actually provide those inputs to people. Nor do I think we have the networking capability to provide the latency needed to kind of work in a world like that. So
Can we talk about the ethics of that for a second? Like actually connecting.
What do you mean? What's wrong with that?
Technology
I just jam
to
a
your
needle.
body?
I just jam a needle in your back of your head. Boom, you're VR. What's the ethics? What's
I
wrong with
don't.
that?
Yeah, like
What
see
do you
something
mean?
like
You don't
that.
like needles in your brain?
No, I don't personally. But something like that scares the living hell out of me, man. Because it's like, that's not. Oh, like as I'm wrapping my
ethical?
Yeah. Not even ethical. It could be ethical, could not be ethical. That's your own personal moral choices there, right?
Privacy
We don't have to get
invasive?
we don't have to get into the whole philosophy of that aspect, but it's kind of like it's invasive, I would say, right? It's definitely an invasive procedure, but it's sort of, messing with the human body on a level never before seen. And I guess
I mean, we do that already
Where-
in some aspects.
where does it really just like
And
end? Will you have like virtual reality like murders in the future?
I
Like
mean,
I'm
that's
sure
the
you will.
dystopia question. That's the dystopia question for this millennia. Well,
like if I'm playing Robo Recall, right? Like and I'm feeling the shots on my chest or back or wherever they're shooting me from, right? It's like, am I gonna die? Am I gonna really die at the end of the game?
You don't have to feel them, right? The whole point would be you'd be able to artificially create those senses. So, for example, if you just didn't artificially create the actual pain for a gunshot wound, you would never feel that, right? And obviously, these are things that require a lot of perfection and fine tuning, and they probably require hardware level
ton of security on this thing. Let me tell you.
Oh well, of course you do. Well, I mean, you need a ton of security on everything, but this in particular, you're totally right. But I do think that the actual positives you have to gain from something like this is, I think, greatly outweighs the possible negatives.
100%. I think it'd be a huge experience, but I also think it can bring a whole lot of problems because you're opening an avenue, basically a biometric doorway to a huge load of issues if something goes wrong.
Yeah, your biometric data will be stolen. I'm trying to figure it out, but think about like what a hacker can do, right? Like a hacker could literally.
Well, that's what I meant.
We're really talking to the science fiction point of like mind control, man. Like we're getting to that point where it's like, all right, you have like this chip embedded inside of your neck or brain or whatever for virtual reality purposes, and now you're in like this mind control state, right? Now you're just being mind controlled by a hacker at will or whatever.
Facebook sending you ads directly to your brain.
Like, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, it's a wow.
Well, let's think about this a little bit more, right? Let's think about this. You've got, for example, let's look at Sword Art Online as like your kind of baseline, right? So if you guys don't know like the basis of this, it's essentially it's an anime where they're in the future and full dive virtual reality is a thing, and they use it mostly for video games. And this group of people enter this video game, and the video game developer disables the logout button so you can't exit the game, and takes advantage of the hardware that reads your brain signals to make it so that way if you die in the game, it essentially fries your brain and you get killed in real life, right? So that's what happens in this game. Now,
ethical.
Of course, those are huge ethical problems, and it's actually a real life situation that could happen depending on the technology required to kind of interact with your brain. But at the same time, it's not like it was in that game. This is kind of how I picture like full dive virtual reality actually working. It wasn't an implant, right? They weren't accessing like memories and stuff, although I don't know if they'd be able to or what would happen, but it was simply used to insert senses via your kind of like I said, your neural receptors, and to read senses from your neural receptors. Now, I'm not a doctor. I don't work with biomedical. I don't work in the field of biomedical engineering, but I don't know if it would be possible to do things like read memories, insert memories, actually like.
I hope not.
Actually, like kind of mind control someone just from the same sensors that control like their movement and give them like senses.
Well, too, you say that, right? But Elon Musk is about to introduce basically a new implant basically lets you stream music to your brain this Friday.
He announced that today with Neuralink. I saw his other startup. Yeah, Elon
so
Musk,
this could be...
don't know, runs so many startups that like you lose track. Like, but Neuralink is one of the AI human brain type startups.
Yeah, which basically he's introducing that basically is going to be an implant that allows you to stream music directly to your brain.
Look, I am not doing any implants. I want technology. Like the only technology I want on me is my cell phone that I could throw away from me at any point in time. I do not want any. And this is coming from an engineer who builds technology. I don't want any technology on me in my person.
It just shows that if this is in fact true, when the product he will introduce this Friday is tangible and real, we're a lot closer to the technology that we're proposing right now than we think.
All right, Nine.
We are.
Nine, how about this? Ready? You go ahead and you get the Neuralink implant. I'll get the
chloroform. You guys know how it goes.
I'll get the chloroform, and we'll surprise Stu for his birthday next year.
Got it. 100%. You get the chloroform, make sure it's on sale. I'll get the Neuralink, and I have a big old birthday bash where he wakes up in a virtual reality streaming Spotify.
Yeah, I don't even have a Spotify account.
And then we might.
Don't worry. We'll make that one for you. 100%. Don't worry. All things will be taken care of. But
that's the worst revenge. Put me on like Apple Music or something where I don't have a subscription. So on top of that, I got the implant, but I can't even use it because I don't got the subscription for it.
That's how it is, man. But it just shows like the questions we're asking isn't as far out or as drastic as people may think. Like, oh, that's at least
Man.
50 or 60 years, maybe 100 years from now. Now
This brings me back to like, I don't know if you guys ever watched Shark Tank, right? But this brings me back to the early days of Shark Tank where you had this dude who came on and pitched like this product. But the essential gist of the product was that people would have to get Bluetooth devices embedded at like the back of their ear.
Oh.
And like, that's how you were able to control everything. And it was like, first, we know how obsolete technology gets. Every 2 years, people are getting new cell phones, right? So it's like, how the hell is that even gonna work? And this brings up a similar question I had there. It's like,
your brain's outdated.
yeah, basically, like, you're gonna get outdated, right? It brings up, I don't know, there's this movie with Idris Elba, right? I think it was with The Rock and Idris Elba, Fast and Furious, Hobbs and Shaw, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nope, didn't see that one.
Where Idris Elba was like the superhuman, like, robot computer thing, right? Like, but he was still a human. He was saved by like a chip that he had in the back of his neck. But the people that were controlling him were like, "Nah, we don't need you anymore." And they had a countdown timer to his death where he just blew up, right?
Oh, nice. Who programmed that one in?
Right? But it's like, it brings up all these moral and ethical questions. Like, is this, like, I know we're not far away from it. I can definitely agree with you guys on that statement. But is it the right approach? Are we going to head towards like a dystopian type future like with Ready Player One, or are we heading towards more of a like
I mean, I think me and Four have talked about this before, but we are I don't know if you want to disagree with me with this on Four, but we have thought that the world is probably going to head to a dystopia type world where populations in cities will be essentially overcrowded. The luxuries that we take advantage of today, just as free space, like open air, nature, normal luxuries will be a thing of the past in this future. And honestly, we think that probably VR is going to be one of the many passive, time savers, or like enjoyments, entertainments in the future, where you basically put yourself in a better world, a better Earth, where everything's not as dystopia. Like,
well, why not just make this Earth better so you don't have to escape reality?
Because this Earth can never be as good as a customizable virtual world, no matter what you want to do.
All authors of dystopia world novels. Damn it, we didn't think of that.
They're all like, well, shit, I guess you could have picked up that piece of plastic you saw on the beach, but like...
I'm not saying I don't like this world, and I don't want to make it better, but, I mean, when you've got full creative control over a virtual world, like, come on, you can make whatever you want, like, damn.
I think the question isn't that we clearly do not want a dystopia world. I mean, the name itself implies something sinister, something bad, but I think the problem is that we don't want, just so we want like poverty to be solved or world hunger to be ended. It's just things that like are gonna happen, This is like, just like we don't want to die, death comes. And I think, unfortunately, the way the world's trending right now is that we're heading towards a very dystopia type kind of situation.
I mean, I don't want to pay taxes, but like, there they are out of every paycheck. Come on.
They just show up. It's a type of question of not if we want it, it's just when. I think that's unfortunately the circumstance.
And so let's answer that question. Plus or minus when. Let's start 9. You first. What do you think?
When I think a dystopia type of world is going to appear or be an everyday household, I don't think it's going to be our generation. I think it's going to appear a lot in the next generation, and I think it's going to be pretty standard by 2 or 3 generations later.
All right, 4?
I think it depends purely on how fast the population of the Earth continues to rise.
I think how fast you think the population of Earth is going to rise.
I mean, let's say, what are we, like 8 billion people right now, or 7 billion people, something like that? I mean,
sure.
Maybe figure if we've got... I mean, maybe if we reach anywhere near, like, 20 billion people, like, you could probably assume that the Earth is going to be overcrowded, packed, and dystopian.
Okay.
I'm going to go buy a cabin in Iceland. Like,
well, too late.
Iceland will be
too
so
late.
crowded.
Yeah,
Iceland sank. Iceland sank.
No ice what?
Iceland sank.
It sank.
To the bottom.
To the bottom of the ocean.
To the bottom of the ocean. It turns out it was actually made of ice. Who knew? Well, that's what I'm saying. That's just how... But I mean, like, once again, VR could play a good role in that. Maybe just because the world
It would
sucks.
increase the quality of everyone's life, realistically. Like
Yeah.
imagine if you just needed your little cabin, and like a magic pill that would eventually exist that would just give you all the nutrients you need in a day. You wake up, take your magic pill, go into VR, bam, problem solved. You don't
I
you
don't
no
know.
longer need the
I
world
know.
to be good.
I know. It also sounds very pessimistic of us of being like, well, why don't we just make the world better, like Tu said, or why don't we just improve, human interaction? But this also goes back to like any technology you think about, right? Why don't you know every language in the world? Why don't you improve your regular relationships instead of having Facebook relationships? These are all things that we can all do, but people don't do or take the time to do it because it's
Yep.
hard. These are life changing skills that can take years or ever to master. And technology is just a middle ground or midware to basically fulfill it or narrow the gap. So like,
Man, this podcast took a dark turn.
but let's reel it back in. Let's go back to now, right? To the world where the world isn't so dystopia like, and things can change. This is the present.
Why don't you talk to us about Oculus and their new name, Nine? Come on, or at least their research name.
Alright, well, they changed their name, or at least they changed one of the research labs to Facebook Reality Lab. So that's huge. Like, I guess
Nine is deeply offended by this.
I think it's a very horrible choice in my opinion. It's given even the initial feedback they're getting with the whole controversy of Facebook accounts now necessary and the whole Oculus setup. You can clearly see that people ain't happy about that. And now the fact that you're literally rubbing the Facebook name onto the whole Oculus thing, it's just adding fuel to the fire. It doesn't seem like the right time to, rebrand themselves. Oh, this is Facebook, by the way. But I think we should, given the circumstances now with the, with the pandemic and stuff like that, and, companies like Facebook and, I've been talking about Google and stuff like that. How do you think VR can improve everyday life, and how do you see VR changing our everyday lives in the next 2 or 3 years, like in the immediate future? Do you see any huge changes? Anything particular?
Honestly, no, not really. Any huge changes? Probably not. I think I'll probably consider using it. I'll probably continue using it to play video games. I'll keep playing Beat Saber. And will I ever use it? Probably not within 5 years, 10 years, maybe 20 years. Probably will have some more impact, but we'll see.
What do you think, too?
No, based on all the conversations we had today, I hope it never has an impact.
What about AR? What about AR? Do you think AR is a better than VR?
Yeah. I think AR is a better tool, just because like the way AR can be used on your current devices and stuff like that. I think where it's a much nicer way of doing it, but virtual reality, like completely replacing our reality or making it part of our daily, routines and stuff like that. Personally, for me, I don't think it'll ever be a daily routine, but for others it may be, right? We may in 5 to 10 years be that old generation when you see, the latest social media on an Oculus, and they're all in like their own TikTok realms and on the virtual reality space, and we're gonna be sitting over here like scratching our heads like, what the hell are they doing in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So it's gonna be a very interesting.
Or at least he'll be.
Society
you'll be
heading
sitting over there
more
thinking about what they're doing in there. I said you will be. Me and Nine will be in there.
I'm not. I will not be in there. You guys have fun, but
remember, we got that chloroform. We got that video.
Where that really is heading, like society, that's a really deep question, because like, we've seen with the rise of social media, I guess more people not having like the social skills like that you would have seen 5-10 years ago, right?
100%.
And so now when you bring in this whole realm of virtual reality, I think you're going to have social skills completely dissipate and be gone, right? I see social skills being completely thrown out the window, because now you have your virtual, your imaginary friend as a child is now a real imaginary friend in your Oculus. So it's like...
Well, let me count that real quick. Let me just play a little devil advocate, right? Given today's circumstances, right, with the pandemic, right, we can honestly say right now a lot of people's social skills are lacking due to the lack of, engagement with real people, right? Unfortunately, it's not the same talking through someone through a webcam and their dimly lighted house or their barely flickering webcam. You know, it's not the same interaction, and social skills in general have been poorly practiced because of it. But VR as a tool could be used to enhance that engagement, could be used to basically keep those social skills sharp as we stay in this whole pandemic environment for the next couple of months. And it could actually be the opposite of what you're proposing, pretty much sharpening everyone's social skills in a world where we can't do it as normally as we could before.
Mm-hmm.
So
maybe I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
I think like any technology, right? Take it AR, you know, smartphones, anything, right? It's a tool, right? And it comes down to how we as a society tend to turn or manipulate this tool in a way for the society or beneficial of us all, right? If you go to the dystopia way where it's just an escape, then yeah, it can have drastic negative impacts and consequences because of it. Lack of social skills, lack of perception of the real world, or even connection to the real world, right? You might see a bunch of people just no longer want to come back to the real world because of the dystopian setting. But it can also be used, as I said, like a tool in a good way, where it can be sharpened social skills in this environment where we can't really talk to each other, or even allow training in particular ways that we couldn't offer before without the whole heavy cost. Or even, like we said, with the big one, elderly, right? Give them opportunities, experiences that they can't have because of their physical disabled or their homebound environment right now. You know, I think it's a tool like any other thing, any other technology, and it's up to us as engineers, especially, or even anyone, to really shape this into a tool for the better society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think engineers have the right mindset in place, and maybe we'll have another podcast episode because I know we're almost on time on this, but like I think, you know, engineers always have the right most engineers, I'm not going to say all engineers, but most engineers usually have the mindset in place of building something that betters society, right? But then you always see the way things can be used, right, by people and by the consumers, and how it doesn't really turn out the way you would hope, right? Like there was a Microsoft a couple of years back made like this chat bot, right? That was supposed to be like a helpful tool.
Yeah.
Right? But we all know what happened with that. As it was learning from people who were commenting on it, it all of a sudden turned into a racist chatbot that called very offensive names to very minority groups of people. So it's a very interesting point, right? It's like, I think as engineers, it'll be developed, you know, with the right intentions.
Yeah.
But I don't know from a human nature perspective whether those intentions will stay or go, right?
Yeah.
It was kind of the same concept with Facebook itself, right? Facebook was supposed to be just you connecting with your friends and finding out, you know, like, hey, is this girl that you're friends with single? Is she not single? Like, right? It was not supposed to replace human interaction. It was supposed to foster deeper human interactions when you met up.
Or use a tool to like contribute to the interaction.
Exactly, but as we've seen, you know, it's no longer the case here.
I do just want to bring up one extra point here, right? So I know you're talking about how like, oh, social media has made us like not as social, and you fear that VR would do the same. But personally, I think that VR, even if your only interactions were within virtual reality, I think that you're probably getting more real social skills in VR than you are on social media. So I think that even if everyone was communicating on VR, you're still communicating with other real people using voice. Maybe you're not technically face-to-face, but you're at least kind of face-to-face, depending on, you know, how you're communicating, right? You're communicating with your real voices. Like, I mean, I think that that's probably closer to real-life interaction than social media interactions are.
That's true. And I've seen like a lot of YouTube videos. This particular game, I don't know if you guys heard of, called VR Chat, right?
Yeah.
It's like pretty much like a social hub for VR, right? Mm-hmm. And I've seen a lot of people, like YouTubers or even other normal people, meet a lot of interesting people through this application that they would have not met ever in their life. Veterans, people who are, kind of stuck away from their families, interesting stories, or even people with very different political views that they would have met through their normal means of friends.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And you know, I've also seen a whole lot of VR chat I literally just lost my train of thought. What was I gonna say?
Whole lot of VR chat.
Oh yeah, so I've seen a whole lot of people on VR chat from those like same videos that Nine was talking about, that have severe social anxiety, and they use VR chat and different VR applications to kind of help them stay social, or maybe kind of try to overcome their social anxiety, right? So
exactly,
it's and I know I touched on this a little bit before, but I do see VR as something that could be bad for your average person, but when it comes to, I think it has real benefits when it comes to like helping people with either physical health conditions, from becoming, mentally depressed, or people with mental health issues and kind of like social anxiety and depression from kind of overcoming those things and getting better. So I mean, I think that it has some really cool applications, even in its current form, and I think that it's definitely, something that should be used by people.
I think with the current circumstances with the pandemic, as we keep mentioning, unfortunately, it's a part of life now. Unfortunately, for at least a couple months or maybe years, who knows? But I think once again, VR can be used as a tool to foster pretty still good experiences through VR and still remain healthy and safe throughout this whole pandemic, like movies, concerts, hangout session with buddies, traveling. These are things that you can't realistically do anymore because of the whole circumstances that we're in right now, but can still be experienced because of the VR environment.
Mm-hmm.
So I think to end it off, right, I think once again, like I mentioned, VR is a tool. Even if we have good intentions behind developing this tool for the side of society, it really comes down to us as a society. How do we shape this tool for the benefit of everyone involved? We can focus on great benefits like helping people with mental issues or physical disabilities, and pretty much help them foster and improve and overcome these challenges, obstacles. Or we can go the dystopia route and kind of play the similar role of social media, kind of like dimming the actual importance and beneficials of social social relationships, and just keep them to a mute point of like just having a face and not really fostering any meaningful relationships. So we'll see. I hope we don't go the dystopia route.
Yeah, totally agree.
But no guarantees. I'm just saying too.
Yep.
So get that VR implant ready in your brain.
I'm gonna get a moat
chloroform,
right, with some crocodiles.
We'll get that chloroform for you. We'll make that Spotify account for you. Don't worry, we'll set that up right for you.
We'll give you your first 3 months free. Don't worry about it. We got you.
Oh, great.
But anyway, thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed this topic of the future in VR. I hope it wasn't too depressing for you, but
it was for me.
We wanted to be a little real with you. We're always about hearing opinions and stuff like that, and it's better to hear from us than face it and experience it 50 years from now. So I hope you guys enjoyed this week's podcast of the 49 podcast, and have a great week, guys.
Yep, have a great one, guys. Later.
Catch you guys later.